Okay, we're here live again with another Between the Pages book chat, and this time we have sci-fi author John Rosenman, and I'm going to turn it over to him and let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Okay, thank you, Anita. I'm John Rosenman. I'm a retired English professor from Norfolk State University, and I've been scribbling and writing and making up stories all my life. Most of it speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, dark fantasy, horror, and one young adult novel. What can I say about myself besides the fact that I write? I think a very seminal experience in my life happened when I just turned 12 years old, and I was watching the movie The War of the Worlds. And when those three men go to that cylinder, go to that meteorite, and it starts to open, I was terrified. And that event has shaped so much of what I am today. I have published a couple dozen books, many of them novels, science fiction and fantasy basically, and about nearly 300 short stories in places like Weird Tales, Galaxy, and so on. I've been married for 52 and a half years to the same woman. Can you believe that? She's put up with me that long. And we have two children, Lori and David. And I think that's enough about me for now.
Okay, yeah, I can relate to the War of the Worlds thing. They did a reading in our school on that with the accompanying recording sound. I guess it was a radio or record or something.
Yeah, that was not H.G. Wells.
No.
It was Orson Welles. Orson Welles did the recording. Yeah, it terrified a lot of people.
Yeah, terrified me, that's for sure. Yeah, it's War of the Worlds has a lot to answer for both of us, I think. Anyway, so why don't you give everyone a quick overview of the series we'll be talking about today, Inspector of the Cross.
Okay. I first wrote the first novel in the series over 35 years ago. I couldn't sell it, and it lay in my closet for 35 years. Finally, I took it out and retyped it on a computer. It involves a 5,000-year war, a war that's lasted nearly 5,000 years. And one book that largely inspired it is this one, The Forever War, by, if I can hold it steady, Joe Haldeman. It won the Hugo, Nebula Awards and a few others. And it's about a war that's lasted for 1,000 years. And a hero who's conscripted into it against his will. And it has lasted 1,000 years because of time dilation, which occurs when you travel with extra fast speeds across space. And so many, many generations have died, passed away, while he has continued in this war for 1,000 years. I read this novel and I thought, wow, what if I wrote a book about a man who has lived, I'll up the ante, I'll make him nearly 4,000 years old. He travels in free ships in suspended animation to distant planets and outposts, looking for a weapon or device that will turn the tide against their unbeatable enemy. And who are their enemy? Who's their enemy? Cruel, remorseless, emotionless aliens who want only to destroy Earth. Well, we've had a lot of alien invasion stories. It's nothing new. H.G. Wells did it in The War of the Worlds, yada, yada, yada. But I tried to make it different by shaping a hero who has to live virtually forever. He's virtually an immortal. And in one experience he has, he meets his great-great-great-great-grandson as an old man, bent over and stooped. He has to put up with this. He's had many, many lovers, sired many, many children, but he has to keep moving because he is mankind's greatest hero, and the fight must go on. I wrote one, and then I wrote a second. What's the second? Kingdom of the Jacks. You can find these in Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and elsewhere online. The third was, Defender of the Flame. And the fourth is conqueror of the stars. And there's a fifth and a sixth. And in the process, I create another hero, a 15-year-old girl who's dying of cancer. But she will survive and become another champion in this universe. I just love heroes. I love people who serve others, who don't expect any reward back, who don't like self-praise, and who manage to give everything they have to serve the human race. I called it the Inspector of the Cross series.
Okay, so I'm curious though, where did the title Inspector of the Cross come from?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I just made it up. It sounded good to me, and it doesn't make much sense to some people because how is he an inspector? Well, I answered that question. In Scotland Yard, you had inspectors, and inspectors went and they solved crimes. If there was a problem in a certain part of the country, in a certain borough or city, they went to identify the killer or to stop a crime from being committed. An inspector in this empire is someone who, in the hero's mind, finds a problem, a crime, and goes forth like a great knight to prevent it. And that's where I came up with the inspector. He is the enemy emperor refers to him as the greatest of all knights. So he's like a knight as well. Why cross? Why cross? Because I envision this empire as having originally Christian origins. And so he is an inspector of the cross, one of mankind's greatest knight, and his job, his mission, is to prevent the greatest crime of all time, the destruction of the human race.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about the main character, his personality, his likes, dislikes, flaws, whatever.
Okay, let me see. His name is Turton, and that's because he was killed originally by Turton Nazaline, a coolant that didn't cool. But for some reason, he came back to life. I won't reveal now. Should I reveal how? No, I won't.
No spoilers. This is a spoiler.
No spoiler alert. But I'm trying to tempt readers, but he's destined to continue. And he had an experience in which he saw a human boy destroyed. His entrails hung out of his body, and it was obvious the aliens had destroyed an entire village of humans on this planet and left them as a taunting the hero, as taunting humanity. And this one child was left in the greatest cruelty to live. And Turton, because he saw this child, he became even more committed to his mission. What kind of person is he? He suffered a great deal. Originally he had to choose between a woman he loved, Stella, or his mission of becoming an inspector and going off among the stars. And he said, "I'll come back." She said, "You'll never come back because I'll be an old woman or long dead by the time you return to Earth." And so he was torn by this, but he was dedicated to his cause. He had trained to be this elite agent, and he wanted to carry it out. In the first novel, though, he goes through struggles that I don't have him going through in the later ones. He becomes almost mad. He acts very intemperately, insultingly to people he meets. And the reason is that he belongs nowhere, ultimately, because the people he used to love are already centuries dead, if not millennia dead. And he has to overcome this. And I've sometimes wondered if I even took that too far. But he has to overcome this and become at least semi reconciled to the fact that this is going to be the way it is. He doesn't want praise, as I mentioned before. He doesn't want a slap in the back. He just wants to serve. He wants to be helpful, and he wants to help others. That's the kind of person he is. But in the process, he's loved many women, sired many children, and he's torn. He feels guilty about this, but he continues. And to the enemy, he is their greatest enemy, humanity's greatest soldier, who they have never been able to beat or kill.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about the world. Like, obviously, there's space travel and planets and whatnot. So tell us a little about the universe it's set in.
I'm so glad you asked. One of the things that you have is black holes. And in the first book, he discovers that this alien race, the Zontanians, who are giant intelligent birds, have found a device called the synthesizer that will enable people, human beings, to pass through black holes. In this universe, there's no faster than light travel. But if he gets his hand on this, he can present humanity possibly with the very weapon they've been looking for. Because faster than light travel will enable them, potentially enable human beings to move about the universe faster than their foe. The problem is the enemy, the Chen, spelled C-E-N, Chen, have heard of this weapon, and they have sent an elite agent to this very planet to get it first. So that's a major part of the universe. Another aspect of the universe is that if you find something, if you win a war on a distant planet, lordy, it can take 100 years before news gets back home to Central Command. But with the synthesizer, it'll be possible to overcome that limitation, because you would then have faster than light travel.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about the antagonists of the book, the Sen, you called them?
The Chen, yes.
Oh, Chen.
They are largely emotionless, thoroughly rational. They don't have much emotion except the desire to conquer. They're very aggressive. And they have 6 fingers on their fingers. They have golden bright eyes, and they are physically superior to human beings in every respect. They're not hindered by or limited by emotion, by scruples, by morality, and they want to conquer the human race. However, in the first novel, Turton meets the elite agent who is sent to obstruct him, actually has emotion, and it's a problem for him. And they're called, his name is Troy and the hero is Turton. They're like opposite sides of the same coin. They should become brothers and friends, but this Chen is torn. He has his mission to stop Turton and kill him and get the synthesizer, and yet at the same time he's drawn toward him. And ultimately, a kicker in the novel is that Turton will marry a Chen woman. How about that? I don't know. It seems like a mismatch to me. And how can they possibly have children, since they couldn't be cross-fertile? So I don't think the Chen as a species are that interesting until you find 1 or 2 of them who actually have emotion, and then the equation is changed.
Okay, so we have a question from the audience here.
Oh, good.
So Casper asks, what is the bad guy's motivation for conquering?
It's a little bit like cancer, or like the coronavirus. What is its motivation for consuming bodies destroying tissues and infecting and destroying as many people as possible. It's a little bit similar to the Chen. They want to conquer. Potentially, they want to conquer the known universe, spread out everywhere. They want to be numero uno. And it's like a fever in the blood, something they must do. And therefore, any attempt to make peace with them is doomed to fail. Thanks for your question.
Okay, so what's the hardest type of scene for you to write?
In the novel or?
In general, in the series, whatever.
Oh, that's an excellent question. Let me think about that. I know right now I'm writing a new series, which requires the hero in book 2 to travel from San Francisco to Denver, Colorado. That is about 1,250 miles. Since I haven't traveled that territory mile by mile, step by step, I have to find a way to do it legitimately, realistically. And therefore, I have to do a lot of research. So something where I have to do a lot of research presents a problem. Another thing that's difficult is one that's based upon science. Since I am not a scientist, well, I dabble a little bit. If I'm going to create a space station, as I do in book 3 of the series, Defender of the Flame, I have to read up on what a space station is like and how it maintains artificial gravity and what are some of the necessary aspects of life on a space station. And I guess meaning realistic women who love the hero, that's difficult too, because is it possible to write a character of the opposite gender? I think it is, but it does present certain problems.
Yeah, it does. And I agree, research can be difficult. I write a lot of historical fantasy, so yeah, I do a lot of research too. So what's your favorite scene in the series?
The favorite scene. There are a lot of them. One of them is in book 1, where the hero has to go through a black hole with a member of the enemy sitting side by side, Turton and Troy. I mentioned Troy before. What's it like to go through a black hole? Well, that was a little bit difficult to write. How do you write a scene about a natural phenomena in space-time that no one's ever traveled through? That's difficult. I had a lot of fun doing that, though. That was one of the aspects. Later on in the series, I created this 14 or 15-year-old girl, and having her interact with the hero was very interesting. What else? I'm trying to think. In Kingdom of the Jacks, book 2, I have the hero return home. He is alert. No, I can't. That would be a spoiler alert. He has a parade which is given to him on this station, and I had a great deal of fun doing that. May I mention 2 of my favorite scenes, which are in different books?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay. One of them is in Dax Rigby, War Correspondent, where Dax, the girlfriend, the older girlfriend of Dax, a young man of about 23, has just died, and Dax discovers that he is a reflection of the divine principle of the universe, an embodiment of the earth goddess, not the earth goddess, the mother universe, and he brings her back to life. That was tremendously moving for me. Another novel, I love boxing, Anita, always have. And in the Merry-Go-Round Man, I create 3 young boys who grow up from 12 to about 21. And one of them is modeled after me. And I create this boxing scene where he steps into a ring in Cleveland in 1954 and fights for the Golden Glove Championship. I love that. I've always been drawn to boxing. And I've always been drawn to spiritual matters rather than strictly religious ones. So I hope that's a good answer. It's one I could gabble about for days.
It was a great answer. Okay, so since you did mention your other books, why don't you tell us about some of the other genres that you've written in?
Okay,
Special of the interest to me is the horror ones. So.
Oh, the horror ones. I have written. Let's see if I have any books I can hold up. Here's one I did myself. Dark Desires. You like horror? I can't keep it straight. Dark Desire. I did this myself on CreateSpace. It's now on Amazon. And this is erotic horror. Do you like erotic horror?
Oh,
Sexual
no, I can't
horror?
say I'm too much into the erotica. But,
okay, I'm sorry about that.
But no, that's okay. I mean, a lot of people are. I have nothing against it. Nothing against it. Just not my cup of tea.
I don't blame you. I prefer more subtle atmospheric horror that creeps under your blanket and kind of makes the hair rise in the back of your neck. This is Beyond Those Distant Stars. This is military science fiction, but it has an arch enemy in it, the All-Mother. And I tried to get into the Lovecraft. H.L. Lovecraft tried to present an ultimate alien menace in the universe, and I tried to do the same with the All-Mother. Let me see what else I can find. Oh, I should have brought more books here. I've published in a lot of horror magazines, dark fantasy magazines, over 100 short stories. Some erotic horror, some atmospheric horror. I just submitted a story, my second H.L. Lovecraft story, to Flame Tree Publishing. But I don't have a strictly horror, a novel that's strictly horror by itself. I mentioned the one. Young adult novel I wrote, Inspector, The Merry-Go-Round Man. I wrote one novel that cost me 2 jobs because it was based on my teaching experience. It's now out of print, but I'll mention its title. It's called The Best Laugh Last. I like to write speculative fiction, often fiction that tries to present concepts which are awe-inspiring and fill the reader with a sense of wonder. Concepts which stretch the mind, perhaps to the breaking point. I often write about heroes of one form or another. In Beyond Those Distant Stars, she's a woman about 37 who is, because of a radioactive iodine accident, they have to remove 2/3 of her body and turn her into a superhuman cyborg, and only she can save the human race. It's a theme that reoccurs in much of my fiction. I've written so much; it's hard to pick out. I know I'm passing over many stories that I should mention.
Yeah, well, we'll wrap it up here, and I'll let you tell the viewers where they can find you and your stories so they can check them out.
Oh, you mean the websites?
Yeah, the websites.
The links. Oh gosh, I wish I had written them down.
I mean, you do have a website.
I do. It's www.johnrosenman.com. That's one. I also have a blog. I'm also on Facebook. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. And if you have any questions, or anything you want to talk about, send something to me at j.roseman. Spell it wrong. It's j.roseman. Leave out the N. j.roseman @cox.net. I'll be glad to talk with you and answer any questions you have. So those are some places you can reach me.
Okay, so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
It's a very pleasure talking to you too.
And Between the Pages book chat, we'll be back on the weekend with 2 more authors. So join us then. And that's it for now. So bye.
Until next time.